Folks, I think we're going to get started here. We're 2 minutes late, but we'll have folks trickling in here, I'm sure, because I think it was a coffee break. So, yeah, first off, I know there's always question and answer time at the end. If there's a relevant question that's to a particular slide, don't hesitate to just raise your hand and ask us questions. It's totally fine, totally normal. So. Today we're going to be talking about the key to securing Drupal 8, some best practices for security in Drupal 8.
I'm Rick Hawkins. I'm the owner of a design shop, or a web development shop near Seattle, and I maintain a number of modules, most of them related to security, including key, encrypt, a lot of the modules we're going to be talking about today. And I'm one of the organizers of this Seattle Drupal users group. If you are in Seattle on the third Thursday of the month, come by and see us.
Yep, and my name's cteitzel. I'm the founder of Cellar Door Media and Locker, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Contributed module maintainer with Rick on a lot of these security modules that we'll be talking about. And Drupal architect. I like to build things with Drupal. So. We'll hop right into it. The problem that we see more now with Drupal 8 is that it's a connected system, and a lot of people see that as a good thing, right? You're not alone in building your Drupal 8 site anymore. Your Drupal 8 site itself is not alone. I like to use this diagram of the cogs because it's, you think you are just a small cog, but you're actually now connecting into so much more. This is, it looks confusing to some folks, but this is actually a fairly normal setup now. You've got Drupal 8 sitting there in the center, which is kind of the data arbiter now, delivering data out to a node front end if you're doing a decoupled site. That's also talking to a React front end, which may be getting some stuff off of S3, that Drupal's storing in S3, and then Drupal may be processing some stuff out to MailChimp and Salesforce. So all of a sudden, we went from building a Drupal site that was one site, that everything laid in that one site, to it's now connected into all of these different layers and all of these different systems. That's a great thing, but it also poses a very big security risk. How do we manage now the fact that we now have a much larger footprint in our organization and a much larger footprint in the technology world? This is a little bit of FUD. I don't like to hammer down the FUD, but this is a great quote. This is the former FBI director, Robert Mueller, said, "There are only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be, and even those are merging into one category, those that have been hacked and will be again." And so we have to design our systems as if they're going to be hacked. There is unfortunately no silver bullet when it comes to security. So nobody, and if anybody out there is trying to sell you a silver bullet for security, run, because it's not. You can't rely on a single system and on a single technology in order to protect yourself. And so we have to look at this holistically and start layering in defenses around all these different pieces that we're doing. So let's take a step back and look at what is new with Drupal 8 from Drupal 7 to protect us now, because we did a huge change, and with that we also updated a lot of the old technology. So in Drupal 8 we have Twig now, which is the theming layer. Offers a lot of security features. I'm not going to go into all of them, but we're no longer running arbitrary PHP in our front end. Thank God. So you have one less vector for attack, one less vector for a developer to do something wrong that then exposes your entire site. Do you want to hop into configuration management? Just talk about it.
Just that configuration management, of course, is a big deal. It takes the place of what we're using features for in Drupal 7. The best practice is to commit your exported configuration to commit your exported configuration to your Git repo, which means that if you have any sensitive data in there, it is now in your repo. So that's something we need to consider when dealing with configuration management.
But the nice thing with configuration management is that you now have a list of all of the configuration on your site in your code. So you can very easily see, did somebody change a setting? If all of a sudden something goes wrong, you can see what settings have changed since the last time that you've exported those configurations.
Yeah, that's the upside of
That's the
having
upside
it in
to
the
it,
Git
yeah.
repo.
The biggest one, no PHP filter anymore. Like, this is jazz hand style. Like, the most serious thing, and it's one of those things that I love the intent of being like, hey, let's give people the ability to run code just by dropping it into a node. But it's so fundamentally wrong, because the worst thing that can happen with a Drupal 7 site is somebody gets access to your admin user, they enable the PHP filter, and all hell can break loose. Like, there is no bounds to what that person can do anymore. And so this is gone. Views PHP is gone. There's just no more CRUD that allows for this just gaping hole in our system. So the next one is hash session IDs. This prevents just random session taking over someone.
Hijacking.
Yeah, hijacking a random session.
So in Drupal 7, the session IDs were stored in the database, not hashed, meaning if somebody got a database dump that contained the session ID of an active session, they could just use that to hijack whatever session was being used with that ID. Now that's much harder to do, because the ID is hashed in the database.
Trusted hosting patterns now means that the code now knows where it's at and if it's in a place that it should not be. Single statement limitations to the database queries. This prevents a lot of the SQL injection attacks that you see, where it's just like just arbitrarily long amounts of SQL that gets injected in. Now it's limited to just one statement. So,
so for example, the Drupal Gedden attack was this would have prevented that, just because it would not have allowed multiple statements in a single database query.
You would have to basically break it into a whole bunch of different queries. So just a bit more. And then also mixed mode SSL is removed, which is great. If you haven't already, SSL all the things. We'll talk about it more later, but just do it. There is no more performance hit. There's no more reasons anywhere to not be using SSL.
Right. And Google will give you a little bit of a boost.
Yeah, yeah, they like it a lot. And then automated CSRF tokens. Protection for the forms. So now that now you can tell if the forms have any cross-site scripting going on. So more reading. Rick did a session on this last year at the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit. His slides are up here. And then Peter Wollinen did a great article for Acquia right before Drupal 8 was launched on the reasons why it was more secure, and it goes into a lot more detail on those points. The other big thing that happened in core, which enables a lot of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, is we are now RESTful in core. We now have the ability to very easily take the data that is in our Drupal 8 site and expose it to the world. Yay, decoupled Drupal, awesome. But what happens now? How do we control that data, and how do we control that access? It's a great thing, and it's also a new issue for us. And now we're even more connected in Contrib. You have GraphQL, MailChimp, Salesforce, the whole Commerce 2X suite that's going to be coming out very soon is now integrating with Braintree and Stripe and all the shipping. This all existed in D7, but it's now also in D8. So you mix all of these connected Contrib modules with the ability to connect out of core, and you now get that giant spider web that we
and it seems like
earlier.
The number of modules that have some sort of connection to some site outside service, whether it's an AWS S3 bucket or even just SMTP credentials for sending out your authenticated emails, they're extremely common on sites now.
Yeah. Sites we're no longer, and this was a big thing when we were developing Drupal 8 as a community, was we're getting off the island, right? Well, now that we're off the island, we have a lot more to look at from a security standpoint. In a good way, we have the community of all of these different libraries to protect us, but now we also have a bunch of different aspects to look over. So I'm going to step into keys. Keys are everywhere, and in essence, Drupal doesn't really know as a community in my opinion, I don't think we've done a good enough job protecting them yet. But to take a step back, a lot of the times when we start talking about key management to folks, we have to explain what is a key. A key is a piece of data that is used for authenticating or encrypting. It's a password, it's a fingerprint, it's a handshake. This has been around since communication has been around, all the way from the Caesar cipher to the Enigma machine that's here. Keys have been everywhere we're at, and we rely on keys throughout our lives. Where are keys used in Drupal? The Drupal salt, that's a key. That is a key to get information in and out of Drupal. That's how passwords are stored, is with the Drupal salt. You have all these external services, like Rick said, SMTP, MailChimp, SendGrid, Authorize, PayPal, Stripe. They're all giving you a key saying, this is very secret, I need you to store this. And when we go to tell MailChimp something, we say, send an email. And MailChimp will go, how do I know who you are? You say, I have this key. That's how you know who I am, right? So these keys are our identity. They are, without them, nobody knows who you are. And your online identity, whether it be yourself, if you look at keys as a password, or you look at your website, your online identity depends on it. So why are we taking such little care with our keys, and why aren't we doing anything better with them in Drupal? So encryption basics. So now that we talked about keys, we have the idea of these protected tokens. Encryption is the foundation of our entire web, relies on strong encryption. I can go on to much longer rants later about why strong encryption is important and how we need to, as a community, support strong encryption and not try to weaken it. But you encounter encryption every day in your life and you may not even know it. How many people in here are iPhone users? So your fingerprint, when you unlock your phone, you are decrypting your phone. The key is your fingerprint. It's being sent through a chip on your device to then unlock your phone. After the whole 10 mistaken password tries and it wipes your phone, it doesn't actually wipe your phone. It just deletes the key. The encrypted data stays there, but it'll never be decrypted again. So hundreds, if not thousands of times a day, you are encrypting and decrypting, whether you're going to websites, whether you're, whatever you're doing, you're encountering encryption. Most of the time you're doing this with asymmetrical encryption. So asymmetrical encryption means that you have a public key that is going to encrypt it, and you have a private key that is going to decrypt it. This is the basis of SSL and SSH and Git, and all the ways that we authenticate is with this public-private key infrastructure, right? So we give someone our private or public key, and we say, if you want to send us data, encrypt it with this public key, and then once we get that encrypted data, we decrypt it with the private key. This YouTube link here, we're going to put the slides online, so definitely go through these later. But this YouTube link was just a complete mind-blowing experience for me. It shows kind of the essence of how public and private key encryption works, and it's awesome. Like, for a mathematics nerd and all that, it's just crazy. But there's a lot of complex math that goes on behind it. And but in essence, it's very simplistic and it's very intelligent. We have a way to encrypt data without ever having to know that private key, but we have to keep that private key just as secure as any other key in our system. A good service that is starting to become a bit more popular is called keybase.io. Right now it's in, I believe, alpha or beta. I don't know what they're calling it, but it's invite only. But everyone's got invites, so just talk to some people and try to find one. It allows for PGP, which is a public key encryption. They're a PGP key repo that is going to start acting as kind of a federated ID online for you. And it allows you to verify your Twitter handle, allows you to verify your Reddit handle, and basically become a fingerprint for you online. And it also allows for end-to-end encryption for file transfers between you and anyone else in the Keybase system. So if you're an encryption nerd or want to start sending very secret files to your friends, keybase.io is very, very good for that. A lot of the times, though, what we end up working with is symmetrical encryption. And I found this GIF today, and I absolutely love it. It shows the inner workings of a normal key lock that we would use on any door. This is what symmetrical encryption is like. You use the same key to encrypt and decrypt. So instead of the public-private, you have one key that's going to lock it, just like a door. It's fast, it's easy, it's secure, as long as you keep the private key secure. The loss of the key equals the loss of data. And so by, and again, this is how your iPhone wipes the data, is it deletes the key, and all of a sudden you lose all the data. So in symmetrical encryption, it's very, very important to keep that private key private and away from anyone that you're not wanting to give the information to. So the fundamentals to secure encryption is having random and strong, which means long, keys. If you have a key that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that is not very random. It's a very easy key to guess, and you're going to not have a very good encryption. So a random number generator, and there is a patch in core that Rick will talk about later, there were some issues around our random number generator not actually being that random. And if it's not that random, then you can brute force keys a lot easier. Really cool fact, though, is that with random and long keys, if you have a standard 256-bit AES key, all of the energy ever in our sun for the entire existence of our universe put into a perfect computer counting keys would never be able to actually brute force the entire scope of a 256 AES key. In other words, nobody's going to brute force attack encryption. They're going to find your key somewhere. So with that, the other fundamentals to secure encryption are using standards-based encryption models.
Don't write your own encryption.
Yeah, don't write your own encryption methods. Chances are it's not that good. This is coming up now. There are some really cool encryption models that are out there that have a lot of potential. They just need to kind of go through some more standardized reviews. But having standardized or standards-based encryption methods means that you are working kind of like with the open source community. You're working with the community, and everyone is saying, yes, this is a strong, and you're getting much more eyes on it. And then lastly, and most importantly, separate the key that you locked the data with away from the data that you are locking. It makes absolutely no sense to encrypt something and then put that key in the same file base in the same system that you are encrypting it with, because if I get access to it, all I have to do is do a quick search, I find your key, and I decrypt all your data. And it's useless. So what needs encryption? This is always a topic that a lot of people come up to us and say, well, encryption's great and all, but I don't have to use it on my site. Like, I'm not dealing with social security numbers. I'm not dealing with credit card numbers, right? Wrong. Personally identifiable information can be a whole various range of things. We're working with someone right now that the rewards number to their club, right? So they have a rewards number, that's considered PII. Because it accesses personal information about that person. It shows their purchasing history, right? So you may think that what you're dealing with is completely innocent, but pieced together can actually create an identity and allow for somebody to steal an identity. So just because you don't think that something needs security, needs encryption around it, think twice and look at exactly what you're doing, and then also look at the totality of what you're collecting, because all of your little pieces that may not be secure in and of themselves may lead to something that's larger. And
it may not be entirely up to you if you're under some sort of obligation of meeting compliance. Some regulatory agency may have some guidance about what PII, what they consider PII, and what you have to take care of.
Yeah, how many people in here are in a regulated industry? So education, healthcare, something along those lines. So I'm not going to be able to tell you specifically what your PII is. Each industry is going to have its own regulations around what you should and shouldn't secure. But as you're building your websites, go to your security team, go to your chief information security officer, or somebody that is holding those regulations and holding those rules for your organization, and say, here's everything that we're collecting. Should we encrypt it? Chances are they're going to come back and say yes, 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 yes. And it's better to look at that early on in the process than have to bolt security on later. So when in doubt, encrypt it. A really fun, we're not going to do it today, but a really fun example that we did at a DrupalCon a while back is we had the whole room stand up. We had about 300 people in there, and we asked 4 questions that would be found on a normal Facebook profile. Do you own a dog? Do you live west of the Mississippi? And all of a sudden we can get 300 people down to 4, or a handful of people, just by asking 4 questions that I could probably pull out of the pictures that you share on Instagram and the information that I can find about you online. So hackers are out there, and folks that are trying to steal identities are out there trying to piece together someone's identity, and they may just take a small piece from your site. So let's try to protect even what seems not that secure. So in Drupal 8, there are a wide range of modules that we've been producing ourselves, but then also there's some other great ones in the community, and we're going to run through some of those. So.
Okay. The encrypt module existed for Drupal 7. It is improved in Drupal 8, and it's just a general API. It doesn't actually provide any encryption methods, and that's by design. It is basically just a pure API, but it is in Drupal 7 it uses CTools plugins. In Drupal 8 it of course uses native Drupal 8 plugins. So it's easy to extend. If you want to write a module that integrates with a particular encryption method, it's easy to do. And it sort of consolidates things around this one module. And in Drupal 7, there were several competing modules for encryption, and with Drupal 8, that's kind of coalescing into the encrypt module as sort of the center of encryption. So I mentioned that encrypt does not come with an encryption method. So the one that we're recommending right now is called rlhawk, and it provides AES encryption, which is the standard and has been for 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's high quality encryption, and it uses an external library called the Diffuse PHP encryption library that is very well written, and like I say, we'd rather use something that somebody who knows what they're doing has written. There is a core issue Chris mentioned earlier that we hope it just was marked RTBC, but we hope it will get committed sometime within the next week. That is preventing real AES from installing properly, because it has to do with the random number generation. Drupal core was using a different version than real AES was, so Composer would not install real AES correctly. So that's coming soon. Yes.
What would make real AES better than something like Encrypt?
Encrypt is essentially abandoned. It hasn't been updated in 10 years or more, something like that. It's Drupal 7 has Encrypt as its default encryption method. It does. Yeah. We're trying to get away from that just because it's just not the most secure solution right now, and there are much better options out there.
It's not that it's bad, it's that AES is better. And one of the nice things about Diffuse is that it enforces best practices into it. So if you try to pass a weak key into Diffuse, it'll reject it. It'll kind of do some checks along the way to make sure that you're actually using AES and doing encryption properly, rather than letting you potentially do it wrong. So that's why we're kind of saying, okay, the encrypt is general API to just route encryption in the system. Okay, now we have to go find a encryption method for it. So here's real AES that's going to plug into it. This also allows us to, say 5 days, I hope it doesn't move that fast, 5 years down the road, a new encryption method that's being worked on now is approved and standardized and released. We don't want to have to move encrypt core around with the changing times because technology changes so fast. So this allows us to say, okay, real AES is the plugin du jour for now, But in the future, if a new one comes in, you can plug that in and then roll all your encryption through that.
There was actually a security advisory on the encrypt module last year, and it was related to the encrypt implementation. So part of the idea is, and if you weren't using encrypt on your website, it wasn't really a security issue for you. So it sort of painted the encrypt module with this, a broad brush that was due to the fact that encrypt was being implemented poorly. So we kind of wanted to get away from that and just be able to focus on making encrypt an API. So in Drupal 7, key management was sort of baked into encrypt. We've split that out because Chris realized that key management wasn't necessary just for encryption, but also for all the other things we talked about, all the other services that we need to connect to. So it is now its own module. The encrypt module depends on it, and it allows site administrators to manage all their keys in one place. And I'm going to risk it and do a live demo here in a little bit. But and the way that works is module builders will basically integrate with the key API, so that their settings form doesn't ask you for an API key anymore. It asks you for
which key.
Which key do you want to use? And again, we'll go over that.
One thing about the key module, this came out of Rick and I were sitting around at a coffee shop working on encrypt. And I was like, why does encrypt manage its own keys? It shouldn't. And so we started thinking about all the other ways that we could use a key module, and we'll get into some of those in a minute. But the really nice thing about the key module is that it has key types and key providers. So as a module, you can declare this is a type of key. And so when somebody goes into the key module, it says, what type of key do you want to create? Do you want to create an authentication key, which is like a normal password or a token? Do you want to create an encryption key? Do you want to create a MailChimp key? So if there's a certain pattern that as a module maintainer your key needs to have, or a certain identifier within it, you can create a key type that will let somebody enter that key in, and then you can also say, you can go through some validation on it and say that key is not correct according to our standards and reject it at the form level, so it never boils back to an issue in your module. It also allows for key providers, which shameless plug, we're one of, but you can plug in providers that say, okay, you go store my key for me, and however you want to go store that, you can store that, and it allows that to boil into the forms and everything else.
Can it create core REST module keys, like API keys?
No, it doesn't create the keys yet, but that's a great idea. We can definitely look at adding that into it. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of ways to go about using that, and then you can also track, how many times it's been used and all that good stuff too. But yeah, it has the extensibility for that. And the idea here is that the key module should be Grand Central Station for all tokens, keys, authentication that are running through Drupal, because it allows a site owner now, even if they don't know how to dig deep into the MailChimp form or anything like that, they can pull up and say, here are all the keys that are in my system. They can go edit them. They can see where they're at, what type of key they are. They can go change them. And so, again, shameless plug, Locker. This is our company that we created to secure keys in an offsite method, because again, the only safe key is the one that's away from the data that it's protecting. So we do offer key creation. There is an API that we've opened up, and we'll be publishing docs here shortly about it, but it's an open API that you can hit and get back a key of any length that you want. That's secure and random, so you could use something like that for your REST API keys. It's affordable and easy. So all of this to say, the goals in everything that we've been doing with all of these modules is to make encryption dead simple. Like, you have an encrypt module, you have a key module.
Or as simple as we
can, right? It still has some complexities to it, but we're trying to uncover the onion here as much as we can, and really bring key management into something that every site builder should start thinking about.
So we want to just kind of go over these briefly?
We'll cruise through these. So field encrypt allows for per field encryption. This is the one that a lot of people use the most. In Drupal 7, it's a bit ham-fisted with its caching. So in Drupal 8, you now have the ability to choose what field you want, but then also what metadata around that field. So even if you don't really need to, you could encrypt what text format the body is in. There's every piece of information that is on that field can be encrypted. You can do batch processing, and it's much smarter around its caching. So you can say, I don't want to cache this field, and that bubbles all the way up into the entity, so that entity is no longer cached.
Because one of the big issues with caching, if you're encrypting data, is you're decrypting it, and then you're storing the decrypted data in your cache, which is back in your database. You've sort of defeated the purpose of having it encrypted.
Or if you're using Redis or anything else like that, now you have a security a footprint in your Redis database that you now have to worry about, oh my gosh, I have decrypted data sitting in Redis.
And so why wouldn't I just encrypt the whole record?
That is what Drupal 7 version of Field Encrypt does. It says, I don't know how to differentiate encrypted data from non-encrypted data, so I'm just going to encrypt all the things.
So it encrypts all the cache.
So every time you go to hit the cache, you're decrypting the cache. You're looking up the cache, decrypting it, and then using it. May not sound like a big thing, but it adds a little bit of extra processing power. It'll slow things down a little bit. It's not as performant as it needs to be. And then if you're using a service like us on Locker, where we're charging you every time that you grab a key, every single page that you load will use a key. And so we actually have a patch in our D7 module, because we had some users go like crazy in their key usage, and we're like, whoa. So we actually turn off caching in Locker, because it's like, we don't want to charge you that much money.
Caching for any field that has encrypted.
Correct.
Or any node type that has a field with encrypted data.
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
that you can't get that fine grained in Drupal 7. Drupal 8, again, that can be done on a field by field basis.
Yep. File encrypt is still it's an alpha release right now. Streaming encryption is what we're moving to in D8 here, so that you can just take an arbitrarily large file, shove it in, and like a wood chipper, it's just going to shred it all out and decrypt it or encrypt it on the outside.
File encryption in Drupal 7 is done in memory, which means you're going to be limited as to how big a file you're going to be able to encrypt before it just your site breaks. So having streaming encryption will address that issue. Yes.
And so are both of these in the encrypt module? This file encrypt is an API encrypt? Or
So again, it's the Drupal way of microservices now that we're moving to, is that these are all separate modules. We maintain them all, so they'll all stay lockstep within each other. But the idea is that file encrypt should live outside of encrypt, and you should only have to plug into encrypt what you want to plug into it.
Mm-hmm. And we'll probably extend that further. There are some solutions for Drupal 7 for encrypting, say, user data, like even encrypting the password hash, just to give you an extra layer of protection for user passwords, that sort of thing. We don't have anything like that yet for Drupal 8, but that's the idea, is that there'll be just small modules that take care of a particular issue that can be installed on a case-by-case basis.
So we're going to go through, Rick's going to go through a demo here on a basic usage that a lot of us use, MailChimp, on a website, and why key management is so important for it, especially in Drupal 8.
Yeah, we don't mean to pick on the MailChimp module. It's just a good example, because it's a fairly simple implementation, and I'll show how I made a modification to MailChimp so that it integrates with Key. So right now, when you go to the MailChimp settings page, you get this API key field, which when you type in your API key, it stores it in the database for you. And it is possible to override it by putting a value in settings.php or by writing a custom module. But this is the default way of storing your API key in the clear in the database.
And one thing to think about in this is that over time, our practices in development have also changed, not just in how we develop modules, but also how we just develop sites in general. So think of your database and how many times you download your database and hand it out to all your developers. Every time that a copy of your database is made, all of your keys are going with it, right? If you're using standard key storage methods.
So here's an example of that. Just examining the database, you can see there's that API key in the clear. And so here's an examples of how you could override configuration in Drupal 8. just by defining a value in the settings.php file, which is somewhat better, but it's not terribly flexible. And the idea with the key module is to give people a lot of choices about where their keys are stored.
And to me, it's kind of bad user experience if I'm a site owner and I go in to enter my MailChimp key and I hit save, and then Drupal's like, no, we're going to override that. But it still shows in the MailChimp module like 1, 2, 3, 4, but Drupal's saying no, it's 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, it's just bad user experience. So we're trying to boil that all up into the admin interface so that what's shown in the admin interface is actually there. So live demo time.
Yeah.
You ready to blow things up?
Yeah, ready. It's gonna go pear-shaped. Okay, so I have a basic installation of Drupal 8. Like I say, okay, so I'll go to the key page, key management page first.
Can you increase the font?
Yeah, I'm gonna. So you can see I've created 3 keys already for various things that that I need to integrate with: AWS, a FedEx API key, my Gmail password for SMTP, and so I'm going to create a new key for MailChimp. And let's see, MailChimp API key, and so. As part of what I did to alter MailChimp to make it compatible with key is I created a new key type, and I called it MailChimp API. So I can actually select that here because when I'm creating the key, I know I'm creating a MailChimp API key. And the benefits of that are MailChimp can then filter, so it's only showing me MailChimp API keys on its settings page. It also allows validation. So say, for instance, I knew that MailChimp API keys always started with an MC hyphen. And I tried to submit something that didn't have MC hyphen at the beginning. It'll tell you. So you get extra validation that's based on that specific key type. And that works especially well too with encryption keys. So if you choose encryption, for instance, as the key type, it will give you an option to select what the key size is, and you can tell it, and then it will validate and make sure that it's the right key size.
Use 256.
Yeah. And as Chris was saying, locker encryption, that allows you to generate your key on the server, totally randomized, and it will show it to you once if you want it, which you probably
don't want it. But that's because one of the number 1 questions we get when people are trying to implement encryption is like, well, what's my encryption key? It's like, I don't know. That's the whole point of it. We, a lot of people are trying to figure out how do I create a secure key, and there's ways out there that you have to go to the Googles and find, and we just said, no, we'll just create a way for you in the encryption or in the key settings to create your own encryption key.
So here are the key providers that Chris was talking about. The configuration is storing the key value in the configuration in the database, which isn't really an improvement over the original MailChimp implementation, but this is useful for development and just doing quick demos without needing to do anything special.
So file stores it. You can just create a text file outside the web root and put your location to the file there, and it will go out and read the contents of that file and use that as the key. Again, this is if you're looking at bad, better, best, bad is in configuration. You don't want to store it in your database. Just use that for development. Better is file. You can have a bit more permissions on that with your server, but it's more difficult to manage as you're deploying to various servers and all that. And so some sort of offsite key manager like Locker would be much easier to manage.
For purposes of the demo, we're just going to stick with configuration. And so now if I go to the MailChimp settings page, you'll see that instead of seeing a text field, I now see this select box, which gives me my key options. And I've told it to filter only to only show me MailChimp keys. So I can choose that and hit submit, and my key is now not being stored the actual key value is not being stored. A reference to the key that I created with the key module is being stored instead.
So the beauty of this system is that if you're using the key module, you can have your configuration change on an environment basis. And so in your key management, you can have dev key, prod key, staging key, all these different keys, and you can just choose like, oh, I want to use my staging key for now. I want to use this. And you don't have to go look back into MailChimp every time. Like, what was that, dev key? It makes that process a little bit easier to switch them around.
All right, we're running tight on time, so I'm going to try to move fast. But I'll do one quickly that creates the key on the server. So 256 bits is good. We're going to store it base64 encoded because it's going to be random bytes, which might not even be human readable. So
and MySQL doesn't like to store raw binary, so you're going to have to base64.
Well, if we're storing it in configuration, yeah, we should probably have it be ASCII text.
Yeah.
We're going to display the value one time so we can see it.
And you guys can hack all our data.
That's right. It's going to be recorded. Okay, so it shows me here a base64 encoded version of the key that it generated. So now that we have this this encryption key, I can go to encryption profiles and create one using that key. And this is where you can choose what encryption method you want and that sort of thing. So again, AES encryption, we're going to choose real AES, which, as we said, is our current recommendation for best practice. And then we choose the encryption key we want to use. We just have the one. Again, it's doing filtering to only show encryption keys. It's not showing, I don't see my MailChimp API key here.
Which you don't want to use for encryption.
You probably shouldn't use it for encryption.
Oh, it didn't like
No.
the key length. Well, it's live demos.
There you go. I was wondering how it was going to...
Break all the things.
Yeah. All right, let me just see if I can change it. We're running tight on time, so...
All right. Any questions while Rick's debugging our live demo right now? Yes.
Yeah, so you had just mentioned that we have to wait for the heat death of the universe to crack.
Yeah.
250. Now, is it bits or isn't it 2048 bits, 256 bytes? Are we?
256 bytes. Yes.
And 200. So your UI says bits, and it should say bytes.
Oh, thank you.
What?
No.
And the
Right here?
second thing-
Yeah. It's 256 bits.
With 8 bits per byte.
Well,
Yes.
Okay, because Opia dev environment just upgraded to 4096 out of 2048 bits. So my question was,
Correct.
is that just optics?
It's it's a stronger key, so longer is stronger, but it's like it's one of those things where a 256-bit key is never going to be brute forced. 40 whatever the next one is, I don't know, but it's a logarithmically larger amount to get to that as well. So yes, you're not going to brute force a 256-bit key. You're very much not going to brute force anything higher than that. So it's stronger. It's not any less strong to use 256-bit. So yeah.
I think Bruce Schneier wrote a blog on that too.
What's that?
Bruce Schneier wrote
Yeah.
a blog on key-length.
Yeah, there's some great blogs out there. Luke can point you to one. But it's one of those things where like the added complexity of the key, does that provide any benefit into the encryption method? And the trade-off isn't necessarily there, but it's technically a stronger key. So yes, it is less likely to get hacked, even more so than a 256.
So now that I've created an encryption profile, I'm going to use that profile to encrypt a field that I'm adding called secret info. And so you'll see when you're creating the field, there's an additional option here, field encryption. And it allows you to choose which profile you want to use. We only have the one. And here's that cache, that option to cache or to not cache the data. So we'll leave that checked. We'll save it. And now anything that goes into that field will be encrypted and decrypted as it's shown, no matter where it's used, on a page, within a view, anytime that it's read or written to the database, it's encrypted and decrypted.
Awesome. So conclusions, keep your site and your keys safe, and hopefully use encryption. This is our lovely sticker that we've got going on right now. We are making encryption great again, and so if you want to grab a Make Encryption Great Again sticker, you can. And then last but not least, there's a really good project going on right now that's surveying the diversity of the web. So go check this out, fill out the survey, and be represented. So thank you.